Sean, are you ready to take over?
Yeah, I guess I can go ahead and do that.
Okay, it'll begin in about probably 2 minutes. Okay, everyone, it is now 11 o'clock and we are going to go ahead and begin our free training session. Sean Harrison will be teaching you how to make your first SSRS dashboard.
All right, thank you, Rachel.
No
Good
problem.
morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Sean Harrison, and I am a trainer and support engineer for Pragmatic Works. And today we're going to be talking about creating simple dashboards inside of SSRS. So I normally don't use a lot of PowerPoint presentations in my presentations, but we do have a small one today, very small. All right, so one of the things that we want to understand about dashboards is why we would use them, what they are and why we would use them. One of the big things is that you want to have a clear view of a wide range of data. You may have a lot of different business units, smaller business units that have a certain set of reports that they normally use to keep track of just their local data. But then, above that, you might have some regional managers or maybe even some executives that are over a much larger region. Well, they're not going to use or even care about those same little subsets of reports that all of the smaller business units are using. So they're going to want something that's going to give them a much broader spectrum of the data that they want. One of the other big things about dashboards is that you can link them to more detailed reports. So you may have, for instance, a regional manager that may be over a certain section of the country, like maybe the Northeast or something like that. And if they want to look at, say, sales for a particular part of their region, they don't want to have to dig through a report that's going to have sales for all the other regions in the country. You can make it to where you can have, say, a map feature that's going to jump to a particular area that they're interested in. And that's one of the big things that we're going to look at in creating a dashboard today. Now, also, dashboards can be vital to keeping upper management up to date on the performance of the business. So again, you have maybe these smaller business units that have their select sets of reports. But if, say, for instance, an executive had to depend on all of those, it's much harder to keep up with the data that they're going to need, because they would have to use those different reports from all their different regions, all their different business units. So keeping a wide range of that data into one report or one dashboard that they can use to see only the information that they want when they need it is going to make it much easier to keeping up with their business and the performance. Now, I want to talk a little bit about some of the most important best practices when using dashboards. We're going to kind of mention a few here and there as we build dashboards, but I just wanted to kind of throw out a few right here. One of the big things that you'll hear about dashboards, when people talk about creating dashboards, one of the big things that I hear is people always say, it's all about the bling factor. Now, I can agree with that to an extent. I mean, it's nice to have some flashy, components inside of your dashboard, but you don't want to overcrowd it with lots of things that's just going to clutter the dashboard. In most cases, the most simple dashboards can also be the most effective. You also want to make sure that the most important information is going to be laid out at the top. So you want to make sure that the most important info that you're going to be presenting to your audience is right there at the top, because that's the first place that their eyes are going to go. So that's where you would want to keep that. Also, you want to make sure that you customize the dashboard specifically for the target audience. So when you're creating your dashboard, you want to make sure you have a good idea of who it is you're building this dashboard for. Hopefully you would get some sort of requirements from the business, but you always want to keep that in mind. Keep in mind who it is you're building the dashboard for. So in that case, you may have an executive who's over half the country, and maybe a regional manager that's over maybe a state or a few states. You wouldn't want to give them the same kind of dashboard. You'd want to keep both of their needs in mind when you're creating dashboards for those two different types of individuals. Right, so we're going to jump right into our bids environment. Now, one of the things that I also want to mention is that I am currently using SQL Server 2008 R2. So I'm using R2. There's a lot of great features that Microsoft added with R2. Most of the things that they added with R2 were in reporting services, and a lot of those are some great tools that you can use when creating dashboards, actually. So one of the things I want to show you is I have a report that I've already created. This is just a simple report that's going to show the sales by state. It's like a state detail report. I'm just going to give you a quick preview. It's nothing too big. We just have a parameter here that we're going to select, so you can see different states and provinces. And this is one of the reports that I'm going to use to demonstrate how you can link reports together. So it's one that I've pre-built already. You can just see the state, the city, the reseller names, the order quantities, and the sales amount. Also, by the way, all of these queries that we're going to be using, all these reports are reporting off of the AdventureWorks 2008 R2 data warehouse. So again, we just have this simple state detail report. And I'm going to go ahead and create my dashboard. So I'll just add a new item here. And I'm just going to name it dashboard because that's how creative I am this morning. All right, so one of the first things that I want to show you is how to use the map tool. The map tool is a really great addition to 2008 R2. Lots of different things you can do with it, and it's one of my favorite parts to use. So I'm going to go ahead and add my data source. I've already created a data source for the AdventureWorks data warehouse. So let me just add my shared data source reference. And now we're going to create a data set. And let's see, we'll just call this sales by state. And I'm going to use an embedded data set. Now, usually I would just use the query designer because it makes things much easier. But just so I'm not sitting here coding and boring you all to death with my awesome T-SQL skills, I'm just going to copy and paste all these. I already have these queries written. And these queries will also show up in my blog. I'll post these in a blog later this evening if anyone's interested in taking these queries and also testing them out in reporting services. So for this query, not something that's too difficult. You'll notice one of the things I want to point out. You'll notice that I am summing the fact reseller sales.order quantity as order quantity. So I'm going to sum that whole order quantity. And down here towards the bottom, you'll notice that I am grouping by everything else. All right, so nothing too big there. So we'll say OK. And we have our data set in our different fields. I'm going to increase the size of our design pane and go into the toolbox, and we'll just bring out our map. With the map, all you do is just grab it and just drag it and drop it out here. And then you'll have a series of options. All right, so the different things I'm going to use the map gallery right here. And this is going to give me a few options using the different states by county. You have USA by state, state exploded, and state inset. If you click on each one of these, it will give you a nice little preview of what the map looks like. Now, by default, this is all you get. But if you're, say, for instance, looking for maps of Canada or maybe Europe, there are some map galleries that you can find online. Also, Microsoft has some where you can download some maps that you can use. Because by default, again, you're stuck with just the United States. So I'm going to use the state exploded, USA by state exploded, because that's going to give us a little bit of room for what we want to do here today. So I'll click Next. Now, with the map tool, you can even move it around a little bit. It really depends on what your preferences are. You can also zoom in and out here. Now, one of the really awesome features that they give you with this is that you can also add a Bing Maps layer right down here. One of the things you want to keep in mind, though, is if you're going to use a Bing Maps layer, you have to have an internet connection. So there are 3 different ones that you have. This is a road map. You can also use an aerial map, and also a hybrid. In this case, though, I don't really want to use any layers to go over it. It's not really necessary for what we're doing here. So I'll just exclude the Bing layers map, or the Bing map layer. You can also adjust your resolution right over here. I'm just going to leave mine set to best quality, which is the default. So I'll click Next. And then you have 3 different types of map visualizations. See if I can talk correctly this morning. You have your basic map, and then a color analytical map and a bubble map. The bubble map is kind of cool because it's going to show you, different size bubbles, all over your map depending on your data. It could get a little crowded, especially in the smaller states. But for this purpose today, for creating just a simple, effective dashboard, I'm going to go with a color analytical map. So I'll click Next. Here it's going to ask you to choose a data set. Now, you can create one or just choose one that we've already created, which of course is what I'm going to do. So I'll just take the sales by state and click Next. And then you have different fields that you need to match. You don't have to have a match for all of these fields. You just need to have a match for one. Basically, you have state FP, state PS. The state PS is the abbreviation for the state, like GA for Georgia or FL for Florida. And then you have the state name. Now, if you remember from our query, well, I didn't actually point it out, but in our query, I'm actually using the state province name from the AdventureWorks data warehouse. So this is the field that we have a match for. So I'll just click the state name, and then you want to select that field. So I'm going to point it to that actual field, which is the state province name. All right, and it's also going to give you a preview of the data down here as well. So if I click Next, we have to choose the color theme. So different themes, we have just your basic generic theme, is what we currently have it set to. But these are just sort of some color schemes, just the way it looks and all the extra negative space around it. So just a few things here, just a few different styles. I'm just going to stick with a generic map because that's all we really need. And then you have the field to visualize. This is what we're actually going to be looking for. You're going to have all the different fields from your data set here, and even a few more. But in our situation, we want to look at the sum of the order quantity. So that's what we want to be looking at right now. That is going to be our field to visualize. You can even change the color rule. Right now it's set to just a basic green, yellow, red, which you can get a preview of how that's going to look. You know, green being the lowest and red being the highest. You can also change it from dark to light, so you can see how the colors are going to be affected there. You also have just green and red, and some colors that just don't even seem to go together, such as brown and green. So you have a lot of options here when you're choosing the different colors to use for the map. In my case, I'm going to stick with a red, yellow, green. Red being the lowest amount and green being the highest amount, since that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for our sales. And then I can click Finish. So we have our map, and if we actually preview this report, this is what we're going to end up with. So we're going to have sales data for all these different states. And there's some that looks like it's not showing any sales data whatsoever. So it's kind of nice. You can see the different ranges of numbers here, how we're rating this. But we're not done with this. Because if you remember, what we want to do with this is we want to tie this to our state detail report. So if you remember, with the state detail report, we are using a state parameter. And this is going to be very important to use in order to link these two reports together. So back over here to my dashboard. Let's see. What I'll do first is go into or actually click on the report, or I'm sorry, the map, and you're going to see this map layer box come up. And you have what's called a polygon layer. So if you right-click on that, you'll see polygon properties right here. So we'll select that. Now you have lots of different options with the polygon properties. You have just general information. You can change the font. You can also add some filler colors here, add borders. You can change lots of things about the actual map. Shadow offset, you can add stuff like that. But what we're looking for is the action. So with the action, quite a few things that you can do. You can go to a report, go to a bookmark, go to a URL. In this case, we want to go to a report. I have a little bit of a cough this week, so I have to keep muting myself every so often. Don't want to cough in everybody's ear. So we're going to choose Go to Report, and then we have to specify which report we go to. In the drop-down, it's going to show you all the reports that you have over here. So if we had just 20 different reports in this project, you would see a list of all the reports there. So the report that we're looking for is the state detail. All right. So in order to do this, to link these together, it's going to use a parameter. So this next section, use these parameters to run the report. You'll want to say Add, and then select the proper parameter from the dropdown. So we're going to look for the state. So it's detecting the parameter that's in this report. And then you also want to choose the proper value, which in this case is going to be, where did it go? Let's scroll down a little bit. State province name. So this is what we want right here. Right, so if we click OK, and let's preview this report. So now you'll notice if I mouse over any one of these states, it becomes a clickable object. So we could click on something such as Washington State. It's going to link me to this other report. You can see it's chosen the Washington parameter for the state parameter. and it's showing me data just for Washington. I have that grouped by state, city, the reseller name, order quantity, and the sales amount. So you can see how this would be very effective to use in a dashboard for someone like a regional manager or someone who's possibly over the entire country, someone higher up. In order to go back to this one, though, you'll just have to hit the Design tab, and then you can preview it again. And then we can see a state where maybe there's, it's not doing so well, such as South Dakota. And you can see the order quantity and the sales amount there. So lots of really great things that you can do with maps. And it's one of the most important things that you can use in your dashboards. Why it also is one of the things that I like to put up at the top, depending on who you're actually creating the dashboard for. So, and also remember to name it as well. Sales by state. All right. One thing also that I like to mention is that you can resize these, which is usually a good idea, especially when you get into the habit of using charts and graphs. You're definitely going to resize them just so you can change the visibility and make it easier to read when you're previewing the report. All right, so to start off our dashboard, we've created this map, and we have it linked to our state detail report. So one of the other things, there's a few other things that you would want to have. It's very vital to add to a dashboard. And this would be, I'd say, like a general overview of how different sales are doing, how different products are doing. So one thing that you might see that's pretty common in a dashboard is, say, a top 10, to have a few different top 10s or bottom 10s. So we might have something like, in this case, we could say a top 10 internet sales. So we can see, the top 10 products that are being sold online. So in order to do that, we'll just increase our design pane here. And we're going to create a new data set. And this one we'll just call, let's see, Internet Top 10. Use a data set embedded in the report. And I'm just going to paste this query. Let me just grab my, my query for the top 10 internet sales. Also, as far as the report, that state detail report, if anyone's interested, I'll go ahead and post that data set in my blog as well. So you can have the data sets for all these reports. All right, so we're just going to use something pretty simple here. We're just doing we're selecting from the fact internet sales table, taking the order quantity, the sales amount, the English product name, and we're also ordering it by the sales amount descending order. And I'm going to show you, in this example, I'm going to show you two different ways to achieve a top 10 and a bottom 10. So we've got our query, say OK. And we're going to put this into a table. So let me just bring a table out here. I'm going to drop this in. One of the great things, too, that you can do with reporting services, especially when it comes to creating dashboards, is just the fact that you can snap these together. You'll have this little grid that shows up so you can match all your lines, which is actually very important when it comes to dashboards, because if you're going to present these dashboards to someone higher up, you want to make sure that they do look good. So first, we're going to have a table here for the top 10 internet sales, and I'm just going to drag in a text box and label this, just so we know what we're going to have here. So top 10 internet sales, spelled correctly. And I'm going to go ahead and bold this as well. So I can bold it up here in the toolbar, or also in the properties of that actual text box. Doesn't matter, either or. All right, so now we'll go back over to our report data. And for the top 10 internet sales, I'm going to bring in the English product name. I'm going to drag it down here to the row groups. So that's the first thing I want to do, is I want to group this by the product name. And I don't want to call it English product name, so we're going to clean this up a bit. All right, and I'm going to get rid of this details group down here. We're not going to need this, so I'll just say delete group. and delete group only. I want to keep the columns and just deleting the group. So now we're going to bring in the order quantity and also the sales amount. Looks like I also grabbed a full date alternate key, but we're not going to need that here. And let me delete this column. We're not going to need that either. All right, so a few things that we're going to have to do with this. Go ahead and bold all of these. And I want to add some color, and this is where it kind of gets into, where it kind of brings up another best practice. When it comes to using colors on your report, colors can be very, very important. They can make your dashboard look really good, or they can make it look horrible. One thing that you want to keep in mind when using colors on a dashboard is that you normally don't want to use incredibly bright colors. Usually you'd want to go with some sort of neutral color or some sort of a warm color. So I'm just going to throw in just a nice khaki color here. We also want to go ahead and format our sales amount. All right, number C2, just currency with 2 decimal spots. All right, so there's one other thing that we're going to want to do here, because if we look at this report the way it is right now, or this dashboard anyway, you're going to see the top 10 internet sales, but of course it's more than 10, because we haven't actually told it to only look for the top 10 yet. Also, you can see that this is going to drag on for quite a ways. So that brings up another good point as far as best practices go. You want to make sure that when you're creating a dashboard, do whatever you can to try and keep it down to 1 page. You don't want to have a dashboard, more than 1 page. In most cases, if you have a 2-page dashboard, for instance, the data that's on the 2nd page probably isn't even really going to be looked at or that much. It's going to be easily, pretty much, you could think of it as out of sight, out of mind. So 2 things we need to do here. We need to make this where it's not going to run to a 2nd page, and we also need to make sure we're only getting the top 10. So again, there's 2 ways you can do that. First, I'm just going to go to the group properties, right-click, and we're going to say filters. We can add a filter here so that we can only bring back the top 10. So for expression, we want to say the English product name. Our operator is going to be top 10. And then for value, I'm sorry, the operator is top N. And then for the value, just 10. That's it. So in this case, I'm using a filter. So I'm going to show you another way as well, but first off with filters, they're very easy and quick to apply, but one of the things about filters that you want to keep in mind is that it can be bad for performance at times, because what you're doing is you're placing a filter on the data set, and you're pulling all this information across your network from your data source, but then when you get to that data set on the filter, it's not even using all of it anyway. So in most cases, if you want to try and filter that information out at the data source. So using T-SQL or something like that. So, and we'll show that a little bit. We'll show that in a little bit as well. But that's just one way of doing it, is using a filter. We also want to make it to where it's not going to take up a whole page, because we're going to use some more of these little subsets here. So what we can do is, first off, we need to find out the name of this text box. It's showing up as text box 8. So again, back into best practices. You normally, if you have a text box you're going to be using for something like, something you're going to be changing properties on, or using for some specific role, you want to make sure that you name that text box. So when you're looking through a drop-down list of your different text boxes, you're not looking for text box 8 or 9 or 10. So I'm not going to name them all. I'm just going to name this one. We'll just say, we'll just name it Internet Products. It should be fine. So I'm just naming the text box Internet Products. Because what we're going to do is we're going to go down here to the row groups. We're going to go to the group properties, and we're going to make this to where it's collapsible. So what I want to do is go to the visibility, and you can choose hide. And then right here you have display can be toggled by this report item. You want to make sure you check that. And we're looking for Internet Products. There's that text box that I changed the name of. So the visibility of this report is depending on that text box. So we'll just say OK, and go to Preview, just so I can show you what we've done with this. So now you have your top 10 internet sales, and if whoever's viewing this dashboard needs to, they can just expand it, and they can see, the top 10. Because when you add, lots of different sections like this, like your top 10 internet sales and your top 10 reseller and maybe your bottom 10, you can get a lot of these. And if you have all these showing top 10 and they're open all the time, it's going to cause your dashboard to definitely run a little bit longer than it should. All right. So one other thing that you may need or may actually see in a dashboard would be something such as the top 10 reseller sales, because we're looking at internet sales, but we also may want to see how well we're doing with internet sales. So we're basically going to do it just like we did this, the top 10 internet sales. So for the top 10 reseller, we'll go back over to, well, first design, go back over to the report data, and we're going to add another data set. We're just going to add all of our data sets into this one report. And let's see, we'll just call this reseller, spelled correctly, top 10. So our reseller top 10, select our data source, and I'm just going to grab this query out of here. All right, so not a whole lot going on here. We're just grabbing, we're using the table's factory reseller sales, and we're looking at the order quantity, also looking at the sales amount, and the DIM reseller table, and looking at the reseller name, and also the DIM product, looking at the English product name. Nothing too big there, so we'll just say OK, and we have our data set. So back over here, we want the same thing that we did with the top 10 internet.
Hey Sean, your audio's a little off. Can you try to correct it? One second.
Now?
Yep. Okay, we're back.
Okay. Yeah, I just got a warning message. My audio connection was lost. Okay. A little scary, but okay, we're good. I think we're okay now. All right. So I've dragged a table out here, another table, and I have it placed right next to the in line with the top 10 internet sales. And let me just drag in another text box. So of course we want to label this one as well. And this one is going to be the, let's see, the top 10 reseller sales. And we'll bold this one. So what we're going to look at here under report data, again, we're going to use grouping. So we're going to group, again, by the English product name. And now I want to get rid of the details group again. So I'll just say delete group. And I also, let's see, we'll just say delete group only. Okay. Now we're going to take the, let's see, we're going to take, oh, you know what? We don't need the product, English product. We're looking for the reseller name, if you remember. So let me go ahead and delete that. Not needed. And okay, yeah, it's fine. We'll delete the group as well. So we're going to take the reseller name as actually what we want to group by, because we're looking at the top 10 resellers. So look at the reseller name, and it's adding all kinds of crazy stuff to it here. We'll see delete columns only. There we go. Okay, so drag in our reseller name. There we go. And actually, it looks like we're still having some issues with that. So how about we just get rid of that table, and we'll just drag in a new one. So grab our table, drag that back in. Move it up. All right, There we go. Okay, so we're going to look at the reseller name. We're going to group by reseller name, drop that in, and we're going to delete the group, the details group, delete group only. And now we're just going to bring in, we really don't need the products actually in this case. We'll just bring in order quantity. So I grabbed the wrong one actually. So here we go, order quantity. It's going to sum that for me, and also the sales amount. And let me get rid of the one on the end here. Alright, so again, we want to make this all uniform. So we're going to go ahead and change that background color, just like we did with the other. And remember, we want to format the sales amount. So just find number, and format that as C2. Also want to bold all of this. And we want to make this collapsible as well. And apply a filter. So we'll go into reseller name, the reseller name group anyway. And the first thing we're going to do is add the visibility. So we have to look at the name of this text box right above it, which text box 27. Of course, for this example, I'm not going to go and rename all of them. So for the group properties, we'll say visibility. We're going to hide it, and display can be toggled by text box 27. Now we're also going to add a filter to this one again. And just like the last one, we're going to look at the reseller name in this case. The operator is going to be the top N. And then the value could just be 10. Okay? So if we preview the report, we should have both of these sections as collapsible. And we can expand that. So now we can see our top 10 resellers. You could change it to top 10 resellers, or you could look at product names and see what the most popular products are that are being sold, your top 10 products. So you could really go either way with that one. So, but one thing that you definitely want to add, and is actually also very important in a dashboard, would be something such as a bottom 10 resellers. Just so someone higher up the chain might know what reseller is not performing the way they should, or not doing the best. So we can go ahead and add another one of those as well. So we go back over to design, and let's increase this a little bit. And this time we want to take, or we'll actually create another data set here. And we'll call this reseller bottom 10. And we'll just add another embedded query. Now, here's where we're going to change things a little bit. Instead of using a filter, we're going to filter this information out of, out through using T-SQL. So, and the way we do that is when we do our select statement, we're just saying select top 10. And we're ordering by the reseller sales amount. Also, if we looked at that in the query designer, you'll notice that the sort type we're using on the sales amount is ascending. All right. So we'll just say OK. And oops, let's go back into that data set. This is one thing that you're actually seeing right now is a weird little thing with reporting services. In order to actually get this to show up, since I was in Query Designer and said cancel, it's not showing my fields. So I just say OK, then OK, and it's going to show up. So one little thing that I always thought was kind of strange about reporting services. Even though we didn't make any changes in that Query Designer, it still isn't going to show you your data set, or the fields in the data set anyway. All right, so we have our data set now. This one's just going to be a simple one, and we're filtering out through T-SQL, so we don't need to do anything with filters in this case. So go back over to my toolbox, bring in the table and another text box, Make sure we line all of this up. Looks like our table isn't lined up correctly. And okay, so we got everything matching up. And this one's going to be, again, the bottom 10 resellers. All right, so bottom 10 resellers. Let's go ahead and bold this one. And back here in our report data, we're going to look at the reseller name, of course. So we're going to group it. Oops, come on. There we go. We're going to group it by reseller name. We're going to delete this details group again. Delete the group only. And then we want to see the sum of the order quantity and the sum of the sales amount. I'm just going to get rid of this one here. And just so we can make it match, we're just going to say reseller name. Or actually, it doesn't even have to say reseller name. We'll just call it reseller. That's fine. And we'll select these text boxes and add the appropriate color. And also bold them. All right. So again, remember we need to format the sales amount. And we also want to make this one collapsible. So we'll go back into the group properties. This time only going into, oh, you know what? Again, we have to get the name of that text box, which is text box 36. So back into the group properties. And visibility, we're going to hide it. Display can be toggled by this report item, and we are looking for, where did it go? Text box 36. All right, so now when we preview this, it's going to give us a little collapsed table here with our bottom 10. Which remember, we did all of that in T-SQL. You're going to see something else kind of funny here as well. At first glance, you might think, okay, everything's showing $1.37, so something's definitely wrong. I only order quantity of 1. That's the first thing I thought when I first put this one together. But I checked the table, and there actually are probably about 20 resellers with only 1 order quantity and a total sales amount of $1.37. So the query is actually working. It's just the data they put in that table is just kind of strange and doesn't seem right to me. But that's how you would actually do a bottom 10 using T-SQL. Remember, we just did a select top 10 in our statement, and we ordered by the sales amount and in ascending order. So these 3 options right here are very common. You're going to see these quite a bit, I would say. Now there's one other thing too, just to show off some of the new things that they gave us in SQL Server 2008 R2. And one of the things I really like about R2 are the indicators. It used to be trying to create indicators for KPIs in 2005 and 2008 where it was not the greatest thing to try and do. It wasn't very much fun. But by adding indicators in R2, they made it a lot easier for us to do that. So you may see something like possibly, say for instance, a section of the dashboard that's going to show how a certain product is doing, like which products are doing the best, selling the best, or how close different regions are to hitting sales goals, something like that. So we're going to add one more of these tables here and another data set. So for this one, I'm just going to be looking at product stats. So I'll just call it product stats, just so we can see how well each of our different products are doing. And for that, I have another query here. And in this one too, with this query is quite a bit different than the other queries I'm using, mainly because I'm having to hard code some of the sales values or some of the sales goals in here, or the order quantities, because of the fact that there really aren't any good examples or really great examples to use in the AdventureWorks database for this particular demonstration. So this is the query that I have, and again, I'll post that on my blog as well. and I have these hard-coded values. So I'll say, okay, I have my fields, and we're going to use somewhat of a KPI here to see how well the products are doing. So on my toolbox, I'm going to grab another table, make sure I line it up with everything else, and then bring in another text box. And again, we'll just call this something like product stats. Come on, highlight the whole thing. There we go. So we'll bold that. And in this case, I'm going to look for, let's see, I'll group it by the English product name. If I can click on the right one here. So we'll group by the English product name. Again, I want to get rid of the details group, just the group only. And I'm going to look at the total sales, and then this column here that says ID. And we'll delete this column on the end. All right, so now we need to go through here, and let me just clean this up a bit. We'll just call it product instead of English product name 1. Total sales is fine, and ID is fine. Bold all of these, and as for the background color, make it uniform to everything else. We'll also format our total sales. All right, so if we were to preview this with all the stuff that we've added now, you'll see that we forgot to make this collapsible. Plus also this ID really isn't helpful. It's not something that's going to make much of a difference to someone that's viewing this report. So go back over to design, and let's make this collapsible real quick. Let's see, that text box is text box 45. So go back into row group properties, and the visibility, we'll hide it, and that's dependent on text box 35, I believe I just said. Where did it go? Text box 35, there we go. Oh, no, it's text box 45. Glad I double checked that. That would have been crazy. Okay, so let's go back into the group properties, and let's fix that real quick. Text box 45. Where did it put 45? There it is. Okay. So now we've got that working. Now, we also saw that ID. Not something that's really useful to anyone, really. So that's going to be our KPI indicator, so we can see how well our products are doing. So if I grab the indicator over here and drag it over, we have different symbols, different directionals, really personal preference on what you want to use here. You can even have ratings if you have more than 3 different values. But in our case, we could take something like these symbols right here. Say OK. You're going to notice it's just going to drop a yellow one right on there. So if we go to preview now, we scroll down, we have our product stats, and if we expand on that, now you can see the product name, our total sales, and whether or not we've hit our goal for the sales of that particular product. You can see that the actual shape of the symbol is going to be distorted a little bit based on the size of the text box. So in cases like that, you may want to do a little bit of resizing, just so that it looks a little bit normal. You can see that most of them are pretty stretched out here. So the indicators are a great tool that they've added with R2, and it adds a lot of extra functionality to the report. So basically now, what we have here, let me go back to the design pane. So what we have now is a basic and very effective dashboard. We have, of course, our states, our sales by state up at the top. So it's the first thing that, say, a regional manager could take a look at and only get the data that they want. And then they can also see their top 10 internet sales, top 10 reseller sales, the bottom 10, and also the product stats. So there are a lot of different things that you can add in dashboards, but these are some of the most common things that you're going to encounter. And again, you could add all kinds of different things to these. You could crowd the page with background images and whatnot, but normally you want to keep it simple and keep it very effective. So that actually is the dashboard that we've created, and I will again post all the different data sets, the queries that we use for our data sets. I'll post those in my blog this evening. And there are a few references also. I highly recommend reading Information Dashboard Design by Stephen Few. There's a lot of awesome best practices in that book, and it's very very useful when you're creating dashboards, and also goes into explanations of a lot of different things like how colors can really affect how effective your dashboard is. So I definitely recommend that one. Also, you can always check out bidn.com. There's lots of great consultants that post there, and also forums that answers are given very quickly in most cases. My blog, for anyone that wants to read it, I'll be posting any of my queries here. It's at bidn.com/blogs/Sean Harrison. And if you do want to contact me with any questions that you had during the webinar, feel free to email me at sharrison@pragmaticworks.com.
Great job, Sean. That was really informative. I learned a lot myself.
Thank you. So you're going to start building dashboards for me now, right?
Yeah, we can try that. We'll see how that goes. I feel pretty confident now.
Next week, everyone.
Yeah.
Tune in next week, everyone. Rachel will build a dashboard for us.
Yeah, that might be happening next week. We have just a couple questions that I think we can get through really quickly, and then I figured they could email you the rest of them so that you could respond, thoroughly. One of the questions we had was, is this being done in BIDS?
Oh, yes. Yes, this is the BIDS environment.
Okay. Good to know. One of the other questions was, would it be better to use Analytics Services DB for reporting?
Analytic DB services for reporting?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I'm partial to reporting services. I would say, because I don't really use that service too much, but so I'm partial to reporting services actually.
Okay, good to know. Let's see. Is there a way to put in the full state title instead of just the abbreviation?
Full state title?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, instead of the abbreviation.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually that's what I did here.
Okay,
because in my query, and I can show you really quick if you'd like to see, in the sales by state query
mm-hmm.
and the dataset properties, I used, I'll just open up Query Designer so you can see real quick. One of the tables that I used was the DIM geography.
Mm-hmm.
And if you'll notice, I mean, it really depends on how that information is in the database, but in the DIM geography table for AdventureWorks, you have both state province code, which is the abbreviation, and state
mm-hmm.
province name, which is the full name. And that's what I'm using here. And then we just match that to state name when we use the map.
Oh, great. Okay. And then I think the last question we have time for is the source an SSAS cube?
No, it's not an AS cube. If it were, the Query Designer would look a lot different, and everything would be an MDX. In this case, I'm just using just the data warehouse tables.
Okay, great. And if you don't mind, could you put the slide up with your blog and email address up really quickly again so that those whose questions we didn't have time to answer could go ahead and email you?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
There we go.
Okay, everyone. Sorry if we didn't get to your questions, but if you email Sean, I'm sure he's going to answer them in a dazzling fashion. So you should definitely email him.
Yes, very dazzling with much glitter.
There you go. You can look forward to glitter. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us, and tune in next Thursday at 11 a.m. where Sherry McDonald will introduce you to SSRS.